Okay, I'm gonna post up some specs on the screen here and I want you all to take a look at them. Now, based on that alone, I want you to choose which of the two you would purchase for your gaming needs, based on these specs. It's not a trick question. You would choose this one right here, right? Why wouldn't you? An uncivilized and untrained ape would do the same thing. And yet, with all these facts, the Atari Lynx still lost. And not only lost, they lost big. But how the hell did that happen? That makes no sense whatsoever. Well, let's go over that. So in the very early 1980s, Nintendo had popularized the portable gaming scene with the Game & Watch series. It was crude, but next to those cute little ColecoVision arcade table units, it was the high point of portable gaming back then. So toward the late 80s, with Nintendo having a huge piece of the video gaming market, it took the next step in securing the portable market side and creating a greater stranglehold by releasing the Game Boy in 1989. But during that same time that the Game Boy was being developed prior to 1989, there was another project in the works by a small ragtag team working within a bigger company in the hopes of making a dent in the ever-widening gap between the Nintendo juggernaut and the rest of the gaming industry. Their mission? To bring a powerful and versatile portable unit to the market that did not have the Nintendo logo attached to it. Only this wasn't Atari, nope. You see, the initial design and concepts that would become the Lynx came to light in Epyx, a company who at the time was mostly known for software and game development, releasing such games as Impossible Mission and Jumpman, and for hardware, the fast load cartridge for the Commodore 64. David Morse, R.J. McCall, and Dave Needle were all working in Amiga when Dave Morse's son said to him that he should take the concept of the Amiga and put it towards a portable device. So the three decided to push ahead and design a concept on a napkin in a restaurant and came up with an interesting idea for this small unit. They then decided to join Epyx after seeing the company on a big upswing with some of their recent video game hits. The stage was set. And before they knew it, they started more elaborate concepts and designs for the unit in 1986. And by 1987, they had a full hands-on prototype to showcase to the company. They called it the Handy Game. I know, it's not the best name, but the technology and capabilities were seriously great for that time. It would be the first handheld color game system in the market. So Epyx, or mainly David Morse, R.J. McCall, and Dave Needle, shopped the system around. Nintendo turned it down since they already had the Game Boy hardware developed and entering the late stages of production. Sega had also turned them down, and from what I have read, they used that meeting to come up with their own idea for a portable system, which became the Game Gear. Epyx would show off the Handy system at the Winter CES of 1989 in the hopes of getting the attention of a buyer. Atari, unfortunately, caught wind of their situation and wanted to work out some contract to help with distribution and production. According to R.J. McCall, when the three of them heard that Epyx was getting into a contract with Atari to make the Handy game system, they threatened Epyx with leaving the company if the deal went through. They had heard lots of bad rumors about going into business with Atari and wanted nothing to do with them. So after Epyx and Atari finalized the contract, they left Epyx. Atari would handle all the marketing and actual production of units while Epyx would handle the software side of it. Atari rebranded the Handy game system and called it the Lynx, the name convention being in conjunction with their recent home console concept, codenamed Panther at the time, and released it to the market with the introductory price of $179.99. This was in September 1st of 1989, just 4 months after the Game Boy was launched, with a retail price of $89.99.
Hey, Mr. Block, can I go to the bathroom?
2 minutes.
Oh, yes! Oh, yes, yes! I'm in the tube! Oh, yes, yes! Oh! All right!
Introducing Lynx from Atari, the color video game you can get away with. Well, sometimes.
So let me pull up the specs here on the screen again as I did at the beginning of the video to showcase the difference between both systems. And keep in mind, on top of all this, the Lynx was ambidextrous, but much larger and heavier. So at this point, as a consumer, you either bought the Game Boy based on name recognition alone and pricing, Or you took a gamble with a company that cost the crash of '83 and cost almost twice as much for a unit that was very impressive, but came with the stigma of having the Atari name attached to it. So right there you can see the first problem that the Lynx had to overcome. Recognition. Sales numbers for the Lynx are sketchy at best, so there is no definitive number to post here. It did sell much better over in Europe versus here, but since I did not grow up across the pond, I have no real experience that I can use as a reference. The Lynx sold actually quite well during the Christmas of '89, with Atari reportedly selling through 90% of their initial shipped units. But the high price at launch surely kept the Lynx from capturing a large percentage in that first 2 years, even though the price dropped to $100 by mid-1991 after the release of the Lynx 2 model, being smaller and having a slightly better screen. The second problem that the Lynx had to contend with? Software. From the time it got released up until it was discontinued, the Lynx had only a total of 73 released games. Yep, that's right, you heard me right, 73. That means that during its 6-year run, it only averaged 12 games per year. Now by contrast, the Game Boy had 1,042 games in total during its 14-year run. That comes to an average 74 games per year. As a gamer, as a consumer who just invested lots of money on the more expensive console, you want a justification for that purchase. But more importantly, you wanted games. Period. What are all the best specs on a system if you have very limited media to draw from the well? I'm looking at you, Neo Geo. Now granted, it wasn't entirely Atari's fault here, or was it? Epix did not keep up with their side of the contractual agreement, and so Atari withheld funds from Epix, which was their main lifeline when it came to games. That did not help the situation, as Epix was already somewhat reeling from the Data East lawsuit it had to contend with from back in 1987. Epix as a company was too reliant on C64 software for revenue, and with that market dwindling on that side, coupled with the stubborn approach in hesitating from pivoting to the console market sooner, and with more focus, the recipe for disaster was imminent. So think about this, when it comes to store shelf space, 74 average games a year versus 12. I mean, how will that help when the consumer walks down the video game aisle and sees game after game for the Game Boy, and even the Lynx game spots are taken over by Game Boy games since they ran out of retail space. The third problem, battery life. So it went beyond the retail price for the unit when you think about it. You just paid $180 for a unit that will eat 6 AA batteries in just under 5 hours. Sure, don't get me wrong, it might be a hell of fun for about 5 hours, but after that, you are stuck staring at a unit that does nothing. Unless you are at home or someplace with a wall outlet or extra batteries. To give you an idea, a 2-pack of AA batteries cost around $2 and so back then, so you're looking at maybe $6 for every 5 hours of playing versus $4 for close to 30 hours on the Game Boy. Unless you bought ever-ready batteries, then it went down to 25 minutes. The Atari Lynx was a battery monster, plain and simple. The whole point of a portable unit is its battery life. Take that away and what do you have? A home console, and we all know Atari's record with that. It also did not help that Atari shifted its marketing focus away from the Lynx in preparation for the release of the Jaguar. Hell, to this day, I would prefer a Lynx unit with some games over the Jaguar any day. So you had a portable gaming device way ahead of its time, capable of doing graphical feats that were not possible on the 8-bit home consoles, on a unit that was ambidextrous, had a backlit screen with full color capability. Some of those games like Blue Lightning, Cybots, and Stun Runner brought to the forefront what the system was capable of, and Atari somehow gave it the PS Vita treatment. You know what, it's a real shame that the system did not get more support from the developers back then, or maybe they wanted nothing to do with Atari? You see, by 1989, Epix had already filed for Chapter 11, slashing their overall personnel considerably. By 1991, with such a small team at hand, Epix was only dedicated to making games for the Lynx at that point, and so the software for the Lynx tanked. And on top of that, during the early 90s, you had the Game Gear and the Turbo Express all entering the market, all fighting for position with their respective hardware and console dedicated software. The point is, the Lynx had a very crowded market to deal with and not enough software to get the attention of the consumer to justify taking another chance on the Atari brand. I will say it again, all that great hardware is pointless if you have no killer games to accompany it. After the shock that came with playing or seeing the first batch of games on its release, the experience went down from there. You see, the games that were on the Lynx were usually arcade ports or arcade-type games, meaning the replay value was short and only meant to be enjoyed in small spurts. Some like Todd's Adventure in Slime World would break that mold, but the list of games that do that is extremely small for the Lynx. The platform has no officially released RPGs or adventure games, the likes of say Zelda or Final Fantasy, although homebrews now exist for enthusiasts of the handheld that are still out there. I recall playing Todd's Adventure in Slime World and I loved every minute of it. The unit also had a multiplayer option where you could hook up 8 units together via the Comlinks cable for multiplayer fun. But the problem is, what killer app really took advantage of that? Todd's Adventure in Slime World is the only one that was 8-player compatible that I know of. I mean, sure, there were a few games here and there that could do multiplayer, but again, the technology I feel was way too ahead for Atari to fully take advantage and give consumers an excuse to buy a Lynx. It's a shame, I know. I would have loved to see what the ex-Amiga team could have done with better representation and more budget and had more companies throw their hat into the ring when it came to the Lynx. On a key note, that same team that designed the Lynx went on to design the 3DO. I mean, these guys were clearly ahead of their time. Brilliant people. Luckily for fans of the Lynx out there, there are still games being released for it and cosmetic changes are available that not only improve the quality of this awesome handheld, but add options not seen before. Now, I know some out there might be watching this video and saying, why not just emulate the games on your PC or another handheld device of your choice? Well, as someone who grew up during this crazy, tumultuous time, having seen all these different consoles and hardware in action, there is something magical about holding that piece of memory in your hands. To see it in action firsthand in all its original wonder. I can play Neo Geo games anytime I want on my PC or
newly acquired ROG Ally,
which I will be covering in a future video, but I'm not gonna lie. I wish I had my Neo Geo AES back and I could play them on the actual hardware using those massive arcade joysticks. You just can't outgrow that magic. Anyways, what do you all think led to the short lifespan of the Lynx? Was it Atari's fault? Was it Epic's? Was it both of them? Or was it released during a time when the market was just too overcrowded? Share your thoughts with us below, and until next